Hey everyone, Chang here and welcome to my channel. Now, today's video is going to be fairly short, but I really want to emphasize the concept of this. Now, I mentioned previously the idea of exponent playing out in our lives. Sometimes we pay attention to it, sometimes we do not. Now, this is a common misconception that I hear a lot when I was working in the bank from our customers, and that's the problem, right? Compound interest plays a critical role in two factors that seems to screw people over or help people a lot. And that's credit cards and that's saving/investment, however you want to see it. Now, here's the thing. Before I go into details, let's just talk briefly about the idea of compound interest. Now, compound interest is the concept of interest upon interest. Now, what do I mean by that? Let's just look at a very basic, scenario. Let's say you have $100. You're going to have a 1% interest on it. So what happens is usually after a duration, sometimes month, but mainly usually is years, right? It will give you a 1% return back. So 1% of 100 is $1. So you're going to add $1 at the end of the year and you're going to have 101. Now, the next year after that, right, it's still 1%. Let's just say it doesn't change in any way, right? What happens? The misconception is that, well, that means you're just gonna add another dollar the next year, right? That's not compound interest. Compound interest means that instead of taking the 1% of the original amount, all of a sudden you're taking 1% of the new amount. So it doesn't seem like much, but all of a sudden you're adding $1.01. So with a 102.01 end result, okay? That seems very small, but that's the whole point, right? Compound interest behaves like an exponent. Actually, it can be used as interchangeably in terms of the description. So we know enough about exponent and how it behaves. It starts off small, right? It doesn't seem like it's growing at all. Doesn't seem significant at all. But after a certain point, it shoots up like a rocket. And that's the key behavior of exponent that either helps us or screws us over. So, two scenarios that I normally hear. The first one is about credit cards. Now, first, here's the thing about credit cards. And I'm not a finance guru or anything, so, I'm just trying to explain the basic concept of credit cards. And then if you want to do the whole crazy planning thing, that's a different channel. All right, so credit card is fairly simple. You borrow money, and then afterwards, you either pay it off within a specific duration and you don't have to pay the interest, or you will have to pay the interest. Now, here's the common misconception. You're not just paying the interest, you have to pay off the original amount and the interest. So the longer it takes for you to pay off that credit card bill or debt, right, the more interest you have to pay because it compounds. So understanding this is the behavior of an exponent. Now, there's two things that you have to focus on: time and the amount. So, the longer it takes, the more it shoots up. Now, if the amount starts off higher, the faster it will shoot up. So, rather than a very small amount and eventually shooting up like the original, if all of a sudden you start off with a pretty high amount, it takes less time to shoot up a lot quicker. That's the concept of exponent, right? It's very simple. It's no different than, for example, you say 2 squared, and that's 4, whereas you say 1,000 squared, and all of a sudden, there it is. Oh my, and this marker's dead. All right, and that's 1 million, right? That's the drastic difference, right? So you gotta be very careful about the amount and the time. So with credit card, since it is borrowed money, you are borrowing money and then you're gonna owe interest to wherever you're borrowing from. You want the extra money that you have to pay to that company to be as small as possible. So how would you do that? Two ways. First and foremost, you want to minimize the amount you borrow if possible, right? I understand that a lot of times, you have to borrow it because it's some significant expense whatsoever. Just be very careful. The larger amount, the faster, or the smaller amount of time you have before it starts shooting up like crazy. And shooting up for you is a terrible thing because that means you owe a lot more. That's not what you want. So either lower the amount that you borrow or shrink the time that you borrow, meaning that however long you borrow, you got to pay it off as quickly as possible. The smaller it is, the less it has time to actually compound. That's credit card. So you want to be here as much as possible when we're talking about compound interest for credit cards. Now, The other thing is compound interest for savings or investment. Now that's a different story, because guess what? That's when you put money in and you invest it or whatsoever and you get a return interest. I mean money given to you. That you want compound, because guess what? The more you get from it, the more it grows, the more you get from it. So what does that mean? Well, since we know the behavior of exponents to look like this, and now if we're talking about saving and investment, we want it to grow. We don't want it here, right? So I've seen a lot of people who get very disappointed. They would put money in a savings account or in an investment account, and then in such a duration, they don't see much change. They see something like this and they're like, what the hell is such a waste, right? Well, that's the thing, right? There's no way you have enough time for it to actually grow. So they get disappointed. When we are talking about saving and investment, we want it to grow. So we have to either put in a whole ton of money for it to grow faster, or if we don't have that luxury, we have to wait a certain amount of time for it to continue growing. The longer we can wait and let it grow, right, the bigger it is. Simple as that. So that's the common misconception. What can you do if you don't have a large amount of money? Start early. The earlier you start, that means the longer the time frame you can have before you really want to get that money and use it, right? If you can keep it in there and let it keep growing, it's going to grow exponentially. You get it? Right? It shoots up like a rocket. You have a lot more to use. So there it is. The two common misconceptions that I see a lot of customers in the bank have. First one, credit card, you want to minimize the amount you have to pay extra, right? So less time, smaller amount. For savings, for investment, guess what? You want it to shoot up, so you have two things. You have to make sure you give it enough time to grow, and if possible, add as much amount as you are allowed to do for it to grow as quickly as possible. So there it is. Hopefully this is a little helpful. Something that I want you guys to see, that is all just exponents in terms of compound interest. And just understanding those two can make you a lot of money or make you owe a lot of money. So there it is. If you haven't already, please like, comment, and subscribe. Hope you found this helpful. I will see you in the next video.